Left alone with kids, this single mum became a star. Welcome back and enjoy the story. Davina Martinez stared at the rain-splattered note on her kitchen table, reading it for the fourth time as if the words might somehow rearrange themselves into a different message. The handwriting was familiar, hurried but deliberate, belonging to her husband of 8 years, Marco. 3 simple sentences that collapsed her world like a house of cards. I can't do this hard life anymore. I've taken what money we had left. Don't try to find me. The apartment was eerily quiet, except for the pitter-patter of rain against the windows and the distant sound of cartoons from the living room where her 3 children, 7-year-old Elena, 5-year-old Miguel, and 3-year-old Sofia, were blissfully unaware that their father had just walked out of their lives forever. Davina's hands trembled as she sank into a chair. The stack of unpaid bills on the counter seemed to grow taller before her eyes. The electricity notice with its bold red final warning glared at her accusingly. The rent was 2 weeks overdue. The refrigerator, when she checked it that morning, contained only a half-gallon of milk, some wilting vegetables, and a few eggs. She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing herself not to cry. Not now. Not with the children, just a room. Away! The crushing weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders like a physical burden. Single motherhood hadn't been in her plans when she'd married Marco, a charming construction worker with ambitious dreams right after high school. But his work had become increasingly sporadic over the past year, his moods darker, his presence, at home, less frequent. And now this. Mama! Davina quickly wiped her eyes and looked up to see Eleanor standing in the doorway, dark hair falling in waves around her serious little face. At 7, she was already so perceptive, so attuned to the emotional undercurrents in their home. Yes, mi amor? Davina forced a smile, slipping the note into her pocket. Sofia spilled her juice on the carpet. I'll be right there. Davina took a deep breath, steadying herself. A spilled juice box. Such a normal, manageable problem. So unlike the avalanche of hardship that had just crashed into their lives. As she passed the mirror in the hallway, Davina caught a glimpse of herself. Dark circles under her eyes. Her once vibrant face now drawn with worry. Her thick brown hair hastily pulled back. At 32, she felt decades older than she had that morning. In the living room, Sofia was crying over the purple stain spreading across the beige carpet. Miguel was attempting to help, dabbing at it ineffectively with a small towel. It's okay, Princessa, Davina soothed, lifting Sofia into her arms. It's just juice, we can clean it. As she comforted her daughter and cleaned the spill, a strange calm began to settle over Davina. The initial shock was giving way to a fierce, protective determination. These children, her children, needed her now more than ever. They had no one else. Later that evening, after the children were tucked into bed with reassurances that Papa was away for work and would call soon, Davina sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills and her meager belongings. Her wedding ring caught the dim light as she twisted it around her finger. With a decisive motion, she pulled it off and placed it on the pile of potential items to pawn. The small diamond wouldn't bring much, but it might pay for groceries for a week. She pulled out an old notebook and began to write. First the immediate needs, food, rent money, keeping the electricity on, then potential sources of income. Her previous job as a receptionist had ended when the small medical office closed 6 months ago. Since then, she'd been doing occasional cleaning jobs and helping Marco with his increasingly erratic work schedule. Her fingers tapped against the table as she considered her options. Cleaning houses, babysitting. Maybe the restaurant down the street needed help. She could work while the children were at school and after they went to bed. It wouldn't be enough, but it would be a start. As Davina made her plans, A memory surfaced, her mother's voice, strong and clear, singing while she worked in there. A small kitchen back in El Paso. Cuando la vida te da limones, mi hija, haces limonada y la vendes, her mother used to say. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade and sell it. A small smile touched Davina's lips. She hadn't sung much since the children were babies, though it had once been her passion. In high school, her music teacher had even suggested she pursue it professionally, but then came love, marriage, children, dreams rearranged and eventually shelved. Davina stood and walked to the window, watching the rain create rivers on the glass. The storm outside matched the one in her heart, but beneath the fear and anger was something else, a spark of resolve taking hold. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she would begin again for herself and for her children. She would find a way forward, even if she had to carve the path herself. Opening the refrigerator, she surveyed the sparse contents with new eyes. She had enough to make pancakes for breakfast, the children's favorite, a small normalcy to cling to before she told them that things would be changing. In the darkness of her kitchen, Davina whispered a promise to herself and to her sleeping. Children, if I have to turn the world upside down, I will. But you will not go hungry. The words hung in the air, a declaration of war against circumstance. Davina Martinez had been left alone with 3 children and a mountain of problems. But as she finally allowed herself to cry, quiet, determined, tears, she knew that this moment was not an ending. It was the beginning of her fight. The next morning dawned with cruel brightness, sunshine streaming through the windows as if mocking Davina's situation. She had slept fitfully on the couch, her mind racing with calculations and worries, and now she moved through the apartment with deliberate purpose, determined not to let her children see her fear. "Where's Papa?" Miguel asked as he pushed his pancakes around his plate, his large brown eyes searching the kitchen as if his father might suddenly emerge from behind the refrigerator. Davina set down her coffee cup, choosing her words carefully. Papa had to go away for a while. He needed some time to think about things. When is he coming back? Elena's question was direct, her gaze steady on her mother's face. I don't know, mija. Davina reached out to smooth Elena's hair. But what I do know is that we're going to be okay. Things might be a little different for a while, but we'll figure it out together. Sophia, oblivious to the significance of the conversation, happily drowned her pancakes in syrup, creating a sticky puddle on her plate. After breakfast, Davina made a series of phone calls. First to Mrs. Hernandez, an elderly widow who occasionally hired her for cleaning. Then to her friend Luisa, who worked at the supermarket and might know of openings. Finally, steeling herself, she called the landlord. "Mr. Peterson, it's Davina Martinez from 3B, she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. I need to talk to you about our rent situation. The conversation was difficult, but not as catastrophic as she had feared. Mr. Peterson, a gruff but fair man, agreed to give her until the end of the month to catch up on the past due amount. Your husband always paid on time before these last few months, he said. I respect folks who work hard, Mrs. Martinez. Just don't make me regret this. You won't, Davina promised, relief flooding through her. One small victory. By the time she walked Elena and Miguel to school, Davina had a plan forming. She would clean for Mrs. Hernandez that afternoon, while Sophia napped at Luisa's apartment. In the evening, she would bake, something she had always done well. And Luisa had suggested she could sell her goods at the bus terminal, where commuters might appreciate a sweet treat on their way home. At the school gates, Elena hugged her tightly. Don't worry, Mama, she whispered with a wisdom beyond her years. I'll help with Sophia and Miguel. Davina kissed her daughter's forehead, heart swelling with both pride and sadness that her 7-year-old was already shouldering such concerns. Just be a kid today, okay? That's your job. The day passed in a blur of activity. Mrs. Hernandez's house took 3 hours to clean thoroughly, and the older woman pressed an extra $20 into Davina's hand at the end. "For those beautiful children of yours," she said, patting Davina's arm, "and there's some leftover stew in this container for your dinner." Fighting tears, Davina accepted both gifts. "Thank you, Mrs. Hernandez." At home, while Sophia napped on a blanket in the living room, Davina took inventory of her baking supplies. She had enough flour, sugar, and eggs to make several batches of her cinnamon-laced chocolate chip cookies. They had always been Marco's favorite. The thought of him brought a fresh wave of anger and hurt. How could he leave them like this? Did he not care that his children would wake up asking for him? That they would go to bed confused by his absence? Davina channeled her emotions into her baking, measuring and mixing with fierce intensity. By the time Elena and Miguel returned from school, the apartment was filled with the comforting aroma of fresh cookies. "Did you make these for us?" Miguel asked, eyes wide with excitement. "Some are for us," Davina said, packaging most of the cookies in clear plastic bags, tied with simple ribbon she'd salvaged from her craft drawer. "But I'm going to sell the rest to help us earn some money." "Like a cookie business?" Elena asked, helping herself to one of the cookies set aside for the family. "Exactly like that," Davina nodded, finding a smile. "Sometimes when things get tough, we have to get creative." That evening, after a dinner of Mrs. Hernandez's stew, Davina dressed. In her most presentable clothes, a simple blue blouse and her least worn jeans, she arranged the cookies in a basket and gave final instructions to Elena. "I'll be back by 8. You have the phone number for Mrs. Flores next door if there's an emergency. Sophia should sleep the whole time, and Miguel needs to finish his reading before bed." Elena nodded solemnly, accepting the responsibility with quiet dignity. As Davina hesitated at the door, her daughter gave her a gentle push. "Go, Mama. We'll be fine." The bus terminal was crowded with the evening commute, people rushing to and from platforms with tired expressions. Davina found a spot near the main entrance, set down her basket, and began to offer her cookies to passing strangers. The first hour was discouraging. Many people hurried past without a glance, while others shook their heads apologetically. But gradually, sales began to trickle in. A businessman bought 3 bags. A young couple shared 1 cookie and immediately came back for more. A security guard bought a bag and then directed other employees her way. By the time Davina packed up to leave, her basket was empty and her pocket held $73. Not a fortune, but more than she'd hoped for on her first attempt. On the bus ride home, exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. Her feet ached from standing, her back hurt from tension, and the constant smile she'd maintained for customers had left her facial muscles sore. But there was also a flicker of something that felt like hope. She had faced the day. She had found ways to move forward. She had provided. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Davina began to hum softly, an old melody her mother used. To sing something about strength in adversity and the resilience of the heart. The tune felt rusty in her throat after so long without singing, but it came back to her note by note. Inside, she found Elena reading a book on the couch, the apartment quiet and orderly. "They went to bed just like you said," Elena reported, setting down her book. "And Sophia only woke up once, but I gave her water and she went back to sleep." "You're amazing, Mija," Davina said, pulling her daughter into a tight hug. "Thank you for being so brave today." After Elena went to bed, Davina counted out the day's earnings, setting aside money for the electricity bill and groceries. It wasn't enough yet, but it was a start. Tomorrow, she would do it all again, and the day after that, for as long as it took. As she prepared to sleep on the couch again, unable to face the emptiness of the bed she had shared with Marco, Davina found herself humming that old song once more. The simple act of creating music, even just for herself, unlocked something tight in her chest. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to sing softly, just a verse or two. Her voice filled the small living room, weaving through the shadows, a thread of beauty in the midst of hardship. For the first time since finding Marco's note, Davina slept deeply, without dreams. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. 2 weeks passed in a blur of constant motion. Davina's days fell into an exhausting but manageable rhythm. Mornings with the children, cleaning jobs during school, hours with Sophia in tow, baking in the afternoons, and selling at the bus terminal in the evenings while Eleanor watched her younger siblings. Weekends were spent catching up on laundry, helping with homework, and preparing for the week ahead. The electricity bill had been paid, food was on the table, and she had scraped together half of the overdue rent. Not enough, but progress. What Davina hadn't expected was how quickly word would spread about her cookies. Regular commuters now sought her out specifically, and she had expanded her offerings to include brownies and small loaves of banana bread. The terminal's operations manager, a kindly woman named Naomi, had even allowed her to set up a small table near the south entrance, providing her a sense of legitimacy. "You've got a gift," Naomi commented one evening, purchasing a bag of cookies. "My kids say these are better than the expensive ones from that fancy bakery downtown." Davina smiled, the compliment warming her despite her fatigue. "My grandmother's recipe. The secret is a little bit of cinnamon and a lot of love." As her small business grew, so did her courage to face the challenges ahead. She had finally told the children the complete truth about their father's departure. Conversation filled with tears and questions she couldn't answer. Why had he left? Didn't he love them anymore? When would he come back? "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," was all she could tell them, holding them close as they processed this betrayal in their different ways. Elena grew more serious and responsible. Miguel became quieter, and Sophia asked for her papa each night before sleep. On this particular Friday afternoon, Davina was racing against the clock. She had promised to deliver 24 specialty cookies to a woman who worked at the bank across from the terminal. The woman's daughter was having a birthday party, and she still needed to finish the decorative icing. "Mama, can I help?" Elena asked, standing on tiptoes to see the cookies spread across the kitchen counter. Davina hesitated. The cookies needed to be perfect, but Elena's eager face was hard to resist. "Okay, you can do the sprinkles on these ones, but very carefully, just a few on each." As they worked side by side, a knock at the door interrupted them. Davina felt a flicker of anxiety. Unexpected visitors usually meant problems. "Keeper." "Working on those, Mia. I'll be right back." Opening the door revealed Mr. Peterson, their landlord, his expression unreadable beneath his bushy grey eyebrows. "Mr. Peterson," Davina said, unconsciously straightening her posture, "I was planning to bring you the rest of the payment on Monday." "That's not why I'm here," he said gruffly. "The washing machine in 2A is broken, flooding the whole place. I need to check your apartment for water damage." Relief flooded through Davina as she ushered him in. "Of course. Check whatever you need." As the landlord inspected the bathroom, ceiling and walls, Davina returned to the kitchen, where Eleanor had finished the sprinkles and was now attempting to help Miguel with his homework at the table. Sophia played with plastic cups on the floor, building and toppling towers with gleeful abandon. "Something smells amazing in here," Mr. Peterson commented as he emerged from the bathroom. His eyes landed on the array of cookies. "You baking for a special occasion?" "It's for my business," Elena answered proudly before Davina could respond. "Mama makes the best cookies in the city." Mr. Peterson raised an eyebrow. "Business, huh?" Davina felt her cheeks warm. "Just a small operation. I sell them at the bus terminal in the evenings. The landlord nodded slowly, his gaze traveling from the cookies to the children and back to Davina. My late wife used to bake, always said you could tell a lot about a person by how they put love into their food. He paused. No water damage, that I can see. Your ceiling's fine? As he turned to leave, he hesitated at the door. I haven't seen your husband around lately. Davina swallowed hard. He's not in the picture anymore. Something in Mr. Peterson's weathered face softened. I see. After he left, Davina returned to her cookies, trying to shake off the encounter. She couldn't afford to dwell on pity or what others might think of her situation. There was work to be done. That evening at the terminal, business was brisker than usual. Friday commuters were more relaxed, more willing to treat themselves. Davina had nearly sold out when a commotion caught her attention. A group of teenagers, horsing around, their laughter echoing through the terminal. One boy, pushed by his friends, stumbled backward directly into Davina's table, sending the remaining cookies and her cash box crashing to the floor. Hey, watch it! The boy snapped reflexively, as if it had been her fault. Davina stared at her ruined products and scattered money, a wave of despair threatening to overwhelm her. This was income she desperately needed. I'm so sorry, a different voice said. A girl from the group had broken away, kneeling to help gather the cookies and money. They're being idiots. Are you okay? Davina nodded mechanically, bending to collect her scattered cash. The girl helped her, then turned to berate her friends, who looked appropriately shamefaced. They should pay for what they ruined, the girl insisted, her dark eyes flashing with indignation. To Davina's surprise, the boys shuffled forward, pulling out wallets and offering crumpled bills. We're really sorry, Mom, one mumbled. After they left, Davina sat heavily in her chair, the unexpected kindness from the teenager leaving her strangely emotional. She'd been running on pure adrenaline for weeks, never allowing herself a moment to truly feel the weight of her circumstances. As she packed up her table, she realized she was humming again, something she had been doing more frequently lately. Music had always been her refuge, her way of processing emotions too complex for words. Now, in the echoing space of the bus terminal, her voice found its way out, soft but clear, singing a bittersweet ballad about resilience and hope. Her hands moved automatically, cleaning and packing, while her mind drifted with the melody. She didn't notice the small audience that had gathered until a smattering of applause broke her reverie. Embarrassed, Davina looked up to find several commuters watching her, appreciation on their faces. That was beautiful, an elderly woman said, her eyes warm. You should be on a stage somewhere, not selling cookies in a bus terminal. Davina shook her head, face flushing. Thank you, but this is where I need to be right now. Later that night, after putting the children to bed, Davina counted the day's earnings. Despite the accident, she had made more than usual, thanks to the teenager's restitution. It was enough to complete the rent payment, with a little left over, a small victory. But as she sat in the quiet apartment, her thoughts turned to the elderly woman's comment. Once, long ago, Davina had dreamed of singing professionally. Her high school music teacher had encouraged her to apply for scholarships, to pursue training. But then came Marco, with his charming smile and grand plans, and gradually her dreams had been replaced by his. Now, in the aftermath of his betrayal, was it possible to reclaim some piece of those abandoned aspirations? Not as a fantasy of stardom, but as a small joy in the midst of struggle. Davina walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Marco was living his new life, unburdened by responsibility. Somewhere out there were all the paths she hadn't taken, but here in this apartment were 3 children who needed stability and love. Here was the life she had, not the life she might have had. And somehow, in the midst of this broken situation, she needed to find not just survival, but moments of beauty. She turned from the window and quietly opened the closet, reaching to the back of the top shelf where she kept a small wooden box. Inside was a collection of CDs, recordings of her favorite artists, women with powerful voices who sang of struggle and triumph. She hadn't listened to them in years, not since Sophia was born, and life had become an endless cycle of domestic responsibilities. Inserting one into the old CD player, she kept the volume low and closed her eyes as the first notes filled the room. For just a moment, she allowed herself to be carried away by the music, to remember the girl who had once sung with reckless joy, unconcerned with bills or broken promises. Tomorrow would bring more work, more worries. But tonight, Davina gave herself permission to remember who she had been, and perhaps to glimpse who she might still become. The first sign that something was changing came from an unexpected source. Davina was cleaning Mrs. Hernandez's bathroom when the elderly woman appeared in the doorway, newspaper in hand. "Have you seen this?" she asked, pointing to a small article. "They're having an open microphone night at the Blue Note downtown. Anyone can perform. You should go." Davina glanced at the paper, then returned to scrubbing the bathtub. "I don't have time for things like that, Mrs. Hernandez." "Nonsense," the older woman replied, her tone brooking no argument. "Everyone needs something that feeds their soul, especially in hard times. You used to sing in the church choir, didn't you? I remember your voice, like an angel." "That was a long time ago," Davina muttered, uncomfortable with the attention. Mrs. Hernandez set the newspaper on the counter. 7 o'clock this Friday. I'll watch the children for you." Before Davina could protest further, the woman had shuffled away, humming tunelessly to herself. The idea was ridiculous, of course. Davina had far more pressing concerns than amateur night at some cafe. The rent was current now, but the electric bill was due again next week. Miguel needed new shoes. Sophia's cough had lingered for days, probably requiring a doctor's visit they couldn't afford. And yet, as the week progressed, the thought kept returning. What would it feel like to stand on a stage again, even a small one? To let her voice soar without restraint, to express the complicated emotions that she kept carefully controlled for her children's sake. By Thursday, Davina found herself considering the possibility. Mrs. Hernandez was reliable with the children. The Blue Note was only a 20-minute bus ride away. She could perform one song and be home by 9. "You should do it, Mama," Elena said when Davina cautiously mentioned the idea at dinner. "You always sound so pretty when you sing while you're baking." "You sing?" Miguel looked up surprised. "I never heard you." "That's because you're always making too much noise yourself," Elena teased, poking her brother. Sophia, not to be left out, began to sing her own version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, her small voice rising enthusiastically, if not melodiously. Davina laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. Okay, maybe I'll go." Friday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Davina had selected a simple ballad that had been her signature song in high school, a piece about finding strength in difficult times. She practiced during stolen moments throughout the day, her voice initially hesitant, but gradually finding its familiar power. At 6, she stood before the bathroom mirror, assessing her appearance critically. Months of stress had left their mark. The circles under her eyes seemed permanently etched, and her face had thinned from skipped meals and constant worry. But her eyes still held a spark, and when she practiced her song once more, they came alive with emotion. She chose her outfit carefully, a forest green blouse that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes, and her best jeans, a touch of mascara, a hint of lip gloss, simple silver earrings that had been a gift from her mother. Nothing flashy, but put together. Mrs. Hernandez arrived promptly, bearing a homemade casserole and firm instructions. "Don't rush back. Enjoy yourself. These little ones and I will be just fine." The Blue Note was smaller than Davina had imagined, a cozy cafe with a tiny stage in the corner. About 30 people were scattered among the tables, sipping drinks and chatting quietly. A chalkboard by the door listed the night's performers, a dozen names, with Davina's hastily added at the bottom. She chose a seat near the back, her heart pounding uncomfortably as the first performer took the stage, a young man with a guitar who sang an earnest, if slightly off-key, love song. The audience was supportive, offering generous applause regardless of talent level. As the performances continued, Davina's nerves began to settle. This wasn't a competition. It was simply a space for people to share their passion for music. Some were clearly experienced, others complete novices. All were received with the same warm encouragement. "Next up," announced the host, glancing at his list, "we have Davina Martinez." Time seemed to slow as she walked to the stage. The short distance felt like a journey across a vast landscape, from the safety of anonymity to the vulnerability of exposure. The stool was too high, the microphone awkwardly positioned. Davina adjusted both with trembling hands. "This is my first. And time here," she said softly into the mic, her voice echoing slightly. "It's been years since I sang for anyone other than my children." A murmur of encouraging responses rippled through the audience. Davina took a deep breath and began to sing. Her voice quavered on the first note, but by the second line, something shifted. The music took over, flowing through her like a current, washing away her self-consciousness. The song was about finding light in darkness, about holding on to hope when all seemed lost, themes that resonated deeply with her current circumstances. As the final notes faded, there was a moment of silence, then enthusiastic applause. Davina blushed, nodding her thanks before hurrying back to her seat, overcome with a mixture of embarrassment and exhilaration. "That was incredible," said a woman at the next table, leaning over. "Do you perform professionally?" Davina shook her head, still breathless from the experience. "No, just for fun." "Well, you should. You've got a gift." After the final performer, as the cafe began to empty, the host approached her table. "Davina, right? I'm Tony. I run these open mic nights." He gestured to the chair across from her. "May I?" She nodded, curious. "You've got serious talent," he said, settling into the seat. "The kind that makes people stop whatever they're doing and listen. We have a Saturday night showcase coming. Up in 2 weeks. Local performers, slightly bigger audience. Would you be interested?" Davina blinked, taken aback by the offer. I don't know. I have 3 children and work several jobs. Time is—" "I understand," Tony interrupted gently, "but the showcase pays. Not a fortune, but probably more than you'd make at a regular job for those few hours. Think about it. Here's my card." On the bus ride home, Davina clutched the card, mind racing. The evening had awakened something she had nearly forgotten, the pure joy of creating music, of connecting with others through song, and the possibility of being paid to perform. It seemed too good to be true. Mrs. Hernandez was dozing on the couch when Davina returned, the apartment peaceful and clean. "How did it go?" the older woman asked sleepily. "It was nice," Davina answered, unwilling to reveal the full extent of her excitement. "Thank you for watching the children." After Mrs. Hernandez left, Davina checked on each child, her heart swelling with love as she watched them sleep. Sophia's cough had improved, she noted with relief. Miguel had kicked off his blankets as usual. Elena slept with a book still clutched in her hand. In the kitchen, Davina took out Tony's card again, turning it over in her fingers. The showcase was on a Saturday night, her biggest evening for cookie sales at the bus terminal. Could she afford to give that up? But if what Tony had said about payment was true, She was still weighing the decision when her phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Is this Davina Martinez? This is Naomi from the bus terminal. There's something you should know. Davina frowned, concern immediately replacing her earlier elation. Had there been a complaint about her selling cookies? Was she going to lose her spot? Yes, this is Davina, she typed back. Is something wrong? The response came quickly. Not wrong. Surprising. Someone posted a video of you singing while you were packing up your cookie stand last week. It's all over the local social media. People are asking where they can hear you perform. Davina froze, staring at the message in disbelief. A video? Of her singing? Who would have recorded her without her knowledge? What video? She typed, heart racing. Naomi sent a link. With shaking fingers, Davina opened it. There she was, illuminated by the terminal's fluorescent lights, singing softly as she packed away her unsold cookies. The video was clearly taken from a distance, the quality grainy but the audio surprisingly clear. Her voice filled the modest kitchen as she watched, a stranger's perspective on a moment she hadn't realized was being observed. The comments beneath the video were overwhelmingly positive. Who is this woman? She's amazing. That voice gave me chills. Someone get her a recording contract. Davina set down her phone, shocked and slightly violated by the unauthorized recording, yet also strangely moved by the responses. People had connected with her voice, with her emotion. They had seen past the tired single mother selling cookies to make ends meet and recognized something of value. She picked up Tony's card again, decision made. She would perform at the showcase. One night of cookie sales was a small sacrifice for the opportunity this represented, not fame or fortune, but a chance to reclaim a piece of herself that had been buried under years of compromise and duty. A soft noise from the doorway pulled her attention from these thoughts. Elena stood there in her pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. "Mama? Are you okay?" Davina smiled, opening her arms to her daughter. "Yes, Mija, I'm more than okay." As Elena snuggled against her, Davina felt a lightness in her chest that had been absent for too long. The path ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges she couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time since Marco's departure, she felt something like hope. Not just for survival, but for a life that included joy. Why do opportunities arrive at the most unexpected times? Just when she thought life had reached its nadir, a door opened that could lead to what exactly? Davina didn't know, but she felt ready to step through it. The showcase was scheduled for the third Saturday in May, giving Davina 2 weeks to prepare. She selected 3 songs, one upbeat, one contemplative, and one that showcased her vocal range. Between cleaning jobs and cookie sales, she practiced whenever possible, sometimes with the children as her audience. "Louder on that part, Mama," Miguel would instruct, playing the role of musical director with great seriousness. "And move your hands more." Eleanor, more interested in the technical aspects, would offer critiques on pitch and timing. "You went too fast there. Start over." Sophia simply danced, twirling in happy circles, regardless of the song's tempo. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and Davina found herself looking forward to these impromptu rehearsals. For a few precious moments each day, the financial worries and exhaustion receded, replaced by the simple pleasure of creating music with her children. The video of her singing at the bus terminal continued to circulate, gaining views and comments. Naomi reported that passengers were asking about the singing cookie lady, sometimes specifically coming to the terminal in hopes of hearing her perform. "You've got fans," Naomi teased during one of Davina's regular evening sales. "There's a guy who's been here 3 times this week buying cookies and lurking around hoping you'll sing." Davina laughed. uncomfortable with the attention but grateful for the increased business. She had started bringing extra inventory and still frequently sold out before the evening rush ended. 4 days before the showcase, however, her fragile new routine was disrupted by a call from Miguel's school. "Mrs. Martinez, this is Principal Goodwin. There's been an incident with Miguel. He's not hurt, but we need you to come in as soon as possible." Davina's heart sank as she raced to the school, leaving Mrs. Hernandez to watch Sophia. At the principal's office, she found Miguel sitting in a chair too large for his small frame, eyes red from crying, knuckles bruised. He got into a fight. "During recess," Principal Goodwin explained, his tone kind but firm. According to his teacher, another boy made a comment about Miguel's father not being around. Davina knelt before her son, gently taking his injured hands in hers. "Mijo, what happened?" Miguel's chin trembled. "Tommy said Papa left because he didn't want us anymore, that he found a better family." Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. "I hit him, Mama. I'm sorry." The principal cleared his throat. "Given the circumstances, we're not suspending Miguel, but we would like to schedule a meeting with our school counselor. Sometimes children need help processing difficult family changes." On the walk home, Miguel's small hand clutched tightly. In hers, Davina struggled with a mixture of anger toward Marco and guilt that her children were suffering the consequences of his abandonment. "What Tommy said isn't true," she said finally. "Your papa's leaving had nothing to do with you, Elena, or Sophia. It was about him, not us." Miguel kicked at a stone on the sidewalk. "Then why doesn't he call? Why doesn't he visit?" The question hung in the air, impossible to answer honestly without further damaging her son's heart. That evening, after the children were asleep, Davina sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills and her showcase music, feeling the weight of her responsibilities pressing down with renewed force. Miguel needed stability and reassurance. All her children needed a father who wasn't there. And what was she doing? Chasing a musical fantasy while their lives unraveled. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tony, checking on her song selections for the showcase. Davina stared at it, tempted to cancel the whole thing. As if sensing her doubt, a notification appeared for the bus terminal video, which had now accumulated over 2,000 views. Reluctantly, she clicked on the most recent comments. "My daughter and I watch this every night. She wants to sing just like this lady when she grows up. Been having a rough time lately. This song brings me peace. Thank you, whoever you are." Davina set down the phone, a strange calm settling over her. Perhaps this wasn't just about reclaiming her own passion. Perhaps her voice could be a gift to others as well. The day of the showcase arrived in a flurry of activity. Mrs. Hernandez arrived early to watch the children, bearing a small gift, a silver necklace with a music note pendant. "For luck," she said, pressing it into Davina's hand. "My husband gave this to me when I was in the church choir years ago. I want you to have it now." Elena helped her mother choose an outfit, a deep blue dress that had been tucked away for years, waiting for an occasion special enough to justify its use. Sophia insisted on arranging Davina's hair, which resulted in several misplaced clips that had to be gently repositioned. Miguel, still subdued after the school incident, approached her last. "I made this for you," he said, offering a carefully folded paper. Inside was a crayon drawing of Davina on a stage, surrounded by stick figures with smiling faces. "That's us watching you," he explained. "We're proud of you, Mama." Davina hugged him tightly, blinking back tears. "I'm proud of you too, Mijo. So proud of how brave you've been." The Blue Note was transformed for the showcase, with proper stage lighting and a professional sound system. Davina peered through, the curtain separating the performers' area from the main space, her stomach tightening at the sight of the packed room. Tony appeared beside her, clipboard in hand. "Nervous?" "Terrified," Davina admitted. He smiled reassuringly. That's normal. Just remember why you're doing this. Connect with the emotion in your songs, and the audience will connect with you. Davina nodded, recalling her high school music teacher's similar advice years ago. Her first performance had been a disaster. She'd forgotten lyrics, missed notes, nearly fled the stage in tears. But the second time, something clicked. She found the emotional core of the song and let it carry her. The first two performers were polished and confident, clearly experienced musicians with established local followings. As applause washed over the second act, Tony touched Davina's shoulder. "You're up next. Ready?" Taking a deep breath, Davina stepped onto the stage. The lights were brighter than she'd expected, obscuring most of the audience. She adjusted the microphone with trembling hands and introduced herself, voice barely audible even with amplification. Someone in the back called out encouragingly, "We're with you, Cookie Lady." A ripple of friendly laughter spread through the crowd. Davina smiled, relaxing slightly. "Thank you. This first song is about finding strength when you think you have nothing left to give." As the backing track began, a simple piano arrangement Tony had helped her prepare, Davina closed her eyes briefly, centering herself in the music. When she began to sing, her voice emerged clear and strong, filling the space with unexpected power. The audience grew still, captivated. Davina's eyes opened, finding faces in the crowd, strangers whose expressions reflected back the emotions her voice conveyed. For the first time in months, she felt truly seen, not as a struggling single mother, not as an abandoned wife, but as herself, a woman with a gift to share. By the final song, Davina was no longer performing. She was communing, pouring her journey of pain and resilience into every note. As the last chord faded, there was a moment of profound silence, before thunderous applause erupted. Dazed by the response, Davina barely registered the standing ovation, the calls for an encore, the tears on some faces in the front row. Tony had to gently guide her from the stage as the next performer waited. To begin, he seemed at a loss for words. That was something special, Davina. Really special. In the small backstage area, several people approached her with compliments and questions. A woman who introduced herself as the manager of another local venue handed her a card. "We'd love to have you perform for us sometime. Paid gig, of course." By the time Davina left, she carried 3 business cards and the promised payment for her performance, twice what she would have made selling cookies that evening. Outside, the night air cool against her flushed skin, Davina stood motionless, processing the events of the evening. Something had shifted, not just in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. The woman who had walked onto that stage was not the same one leaving it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Hernandez. "The children are asleep. Take your time coming home. Enjoy this moment. You deserve it." As Davina walked to the bus stop, she began to hum, a new melody forming in her mind. A song about transformation and unexpected joy. For the first time since Marco's departure, the future didn't loom as a series of insurmountable obstacles. Instead, it shimmered with possibility. She was still a single mother with 3 children and too many bills. She was still working multiple jobs to keep their heads above water. But now, she was also reclaiming pieces of herself that had been set aside, not as an indulgence, but as a source of strength, and perhaps, just perhaps, this could be a new beginning. The weeks following the showcase brought unexpected changes. Tony called to offer Davina a regular weekend spot at the Blue Note, Saturday evenings from 8 to 10, with pay that matched what she'd earned from 2 cleaning jobs. The manager who had approached her after the performance followed through with an invitation to sing at her venue, an upscale restaurant that catered to a clientele with disposable income and appreciation for live music. Davina accepted both offers, rearranging her schedule to accommodate these new opportunities while maintaining her cleaning jobs and scaled-back cookie sales. Mrs. Hernandez became a regular fixture in the Martinez household on performance nights, forming a deep bond with the children, who adoringly called her Abuela Rosa. With the increased income, Davina was able to catch up on all outstanding bills and even begin a small emergency fund. Miguel's shoes were replaced. Sophia's lingering cough finally warranted a doctor's visit, resulting in antibiotics that cleared the infection. Elena received the new backpack she needed for school, small improvements but significant ones. The most profound changes, however, were less tangible. Davina stood taller, smiled more readily, moved through the world with renewed confidence. The children noticed the difference, responding with their own blossoming resilience. Miguel's anger subsided as he channeled his energy into soccer, joining a community league that practiced on Saturday mornings. Elena's serious demeanor softened, allowing glimpses of childlike playfulness to emerge. Sophia, always the most adaptable, thrived on the new energy in their home. On a warm Tuesday afternoon in June, Davina was baking a batch of her signature cookies for the terminal when Elena burst through the door, waving a piece of paper. "Mama, look what my teacher gave me." Davina wiped her hands on a towel, examining the flyer Elena thrust toward her. "Summer music camp," she read aloud, "for talented young vocalists and instrumentalists. Ms. Jackson says I can go on scholarship. She heard me singing during art class and said I have perfect pitch, like you did at my age." Davina felt a rush of complicated emotions. Pride in her daughter's talent, sadness at the memory of her own scholarships declined years ago, hope that Elena might have opportunities she had missed. "That's wonderful, Mija," she said, hugging Elena tightly. "When does it start?" "Next month. It's only 3 days a week, and they have bus service from the community center." Elena's dark eyes shone with excitement. "Ms. Jackson says they'll help me prepare for the arts middle school auditions next year." Later that evening, as Davina prepared dinner, she found herself contemplating this new development. Elena had inherited her musical gifts, it seemed. The thought brought both joy and a whispering fear. Would her daughter also inherit her pattern of setting aside dreams for others? A knock at the door interrupted these reflections. Davina opened it to find Mr. Peterson standing there, his expression uncharacteristically animated. "Mrs. Martinez, do you have a moment?" "Of course," she replied, puzzled by his unusual visit. The landlord cleared his throat. "I heard you singing at the Blue Note last weekend." Davina blinked in surprise. You came to hear me perform?" "My niece dragged me along. She's a fan of those open mic nights." He shuffled uncomfortably. "You've got a real talent." "Thank you," Davina said, still confused by this conversation. "The thing is," Mr. Peterson continued, "my brother owns a recording studio downtown. Small operation, mostly commercial jingles and local artists. He's looking for a female vocalist for a project. Pays well. I showed him a video of your performance." Davina leaned against the doorframe, stunned by this unexpected turn. "A recording job?" Mr. Peterson nodded, producing a business card. "Call him if you're interested. No pressure, just thought you should have the opportunity." After he left, Davina stared at the card, mind racing. A professional recording job. The possibility felt simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. What was happening to her life? 3 months ago, she had been a desperate, abandoned wife, with no prospects beyond scraping by from day to day. Now opportunities were appearing from the most unexpected sources. That night, after the children were asleep, Davina called the number on the card. The conversation with John Peterson, her landlord's brother, was brief but promising. The job involved recording vocals for a series of commercial jingles for a regional retail chain. 3 days of studio work, with the possibility of more if the client was pleased with the results. "It's not glamorous," John warned, "but it pays well, and it's a foot in the door of professional recording." Davina ended the call with a promise to come to the studio for a test recording that Friday. As she set down her phone, she noticed Elena standing in the hallway, clearly having overheard the conversation. "Are you going to be a real singer now, Mama?" she asked, eyes wide. Davina beckoned her daughter to join her on the couch. "I'm not sure what I'm going to be," she admitted. "I'm still figuring that out, but I'm not going to be afraid anymore of trying new things." Eleanor leaned against her mother's shoulder. "Papa said your singing was a waste of time. I heard him say it once." The word stung even now. "Your father had his own ideas about what was important," Davina said carefully. "But sometimes people are wrong, even when they're sure they're right." The following morning brought another surprise. Naomi from the bus terminal called with an unusual request. "The city's organizing a summer festival downtown next month. Local food, crafts, music. They're looking for vendors, and I thought of you instantly." "My cookies?" Davina asked. "Your cookies and your voice," Naomi clarified. "They're setting up a small stage for local performers. I showed the organizer that video of you, and he wants to offer you a spot, daily performances during the week-long festival, plus a booth for your baked goods." The opportunity was too good to refuse, though it presented logistical challenges. The festival coincided with 3 of her regular cleaning jobs and Elena's first week of music camp. Juggling all these commitments would require careful planning and support. To Davina's surprise, the solution came from an unexpected quarter. That weekend at the Blue Note, a woman approached her after her performance. "My name is Carla Jimenez," she said, extending her hand. "I run a small bakery on Elm Street. I've seen you selling cookies at the terminal. They're excellent. I could use someone with your skills part-time. Flexible hours, decent pay." By Sunday evening, Davina had resigned from 2 of her cleaning jobs, accepted the bakery position. With its higher hourly rate, confirmed her participation in the summer festival, and arranged her recording session at John Peterson's studio. The pieces of a new life were falling into place with dizzying speed. Not all reactions to these changes were positive, however. The following week, as Davina was helping Miguel with homework, her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. "Is this Davina Martinez?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "This is Angela, Marco's sister." Davina froze. She hadn't heard from her former sister-in-law since before Marco's departure. "I saw a video of you singing at some cafe." Angela continued, her tone disapproving. "Marco says you're neglecting the children to pursue some singing career." Anger flared, hot and immediate. Marco said that. Marco, who abandoned his family without a word, who hasn't sent a single dollar for his children's support. That Marco? "He's going through a difficult time," Angela defended. "He needed space to figure things out." "We all go through difficult times," Davina replied, struggling to control her voice for Miguel's sake. "Adults don't get to walk away from their responsibilities because things get hard." After ending the call, Davina sat motionless, processing the revelation that Marco was still in touch with his family, still in the city, still watching her movements from a distance. The knowledge was unsettling, but also strangely liberating. Let him watch, let him see what she was capable of without him. The recording session that Friday exceeded all expectations. John Peterson was professional but warm, guiding Davina through the technical aspects of studio recording while allowing her artistic input on the arrangements. "You're a natural," he commented during a break. "Most first-timers struggle with the headphones and isolation booth, but you adapted immediately." By the end of the day, they had completed 2 of the 5 jingles needed, and John offered her a contract for the remaining work, plus potential future projects. "You've got serious commercial potential," he said as they wrapped up. Your voice has that quality that makes people stop and listen. Authentic, emotionally resonant. As Davina left the studio, the setting sun gilded the city with golden light. She walked slowly toward the bus stop, savoring this moment of achievement. The past months had been a gauntlet of challenges: financial stress, emotional wounds, exhausting work, children's needs, and yet somehow she had not merely survived, but begun to thrive. The path ahead was still uncertain. Commercial jingles and weekend performances at small venues weren't a sustainable career. The festival might lead to nothing. The bakery job could end when summer concluded. But for the first time since Marco's note on that rainy morning, Davina felt as though she was steering her own course rather than simply reacting to crisis. Her phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Abuela Rosa is teaching us to make empanadas. Come home soon or there won't be any left." Davina smiled, picking up her pace. This was the balancing act she was learning, pursuing her rekindled passion while remaining anchored to her primary role as mother. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of guilt and doubt. But seeing her children flourish alongside her own, growth told her she was on the right track. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight there were empanadas and children waiting for her. Tonight she would gather her family close and celebrate these small victories. And perhaps, when the kitchen was cleaned and the children asleep, she would work on that new melody that had been forming in her mind. A song about unexpected blessings and the strength that emerges from brokenness. The world might yet hold more surprises, and Davina Martinez was finally ready to receive them. Will this story continue to bring more twists and turns? What challenges and opportunities await Davina as she balances her growing music career with her responsibilities as a mother? Stay with me to find out what happens next in this inspiring journey of resilience and rediscovery. The summer festival transformed everything. For 7 days, Davina's cookie booth attracted steady crowds, her reputation as the singing cookie lady drawing curious customers who often stayed to hear her perform on the nearby community stage. By the 3rd day, her scheduled 30-minute sets had expanded to full hours, the festival organizers recognizing her as one of their most popular attractions. On the 5th afternoon of the festival, as Davina was restocking her booth between performances, a tall woman in fashionable business attire approached, examining the display of cookies with interest. "These look delicious," she said, selecting a package of cinnamon chocolate chip. "Your booth has been recommended by half the people I've spoken with today." "Thank you," Davina replied, ringing up the purchase. "That's very kind." The woman paid, then extended a business card. "I'm Patricia Winters, producer for Channel 7 News. We're doing a segment on local success stories, small businesses making an impact in the community. Your singing baker concept is exactly the kind of uplifting content we're looking for." Davina stared at the card, momentarily speechless. "A news segment? About me?" Patricia smiled. "About your journey. I understand there's quite a story behind how you came to be here." Naomi, working the neighboring city information booth, had apparently shared the outline of Davina's situation with the producer, single mother, abandoned by husband, building a new life through determination and talent. "Nothing exploitative," Patricia assured her, sensing Davina's hesitation. "Just an inspirational piece about resilience and finding your path. We'd film at your performances, your booth, maybe a brief interview. It could bring great exposure for your baking and singing." After careful consideration, Davina agreed. The segment was filmed over the final 2 days of the festival, with a brief interview conducted at the Blue Note during her Saturday performance. The crew was professional and unobtrusive, and Patricia kept her promise about the story's angle, focusing on Davina's growing success rather than dwelling on the abandonment. The segment aired the following Wednesday evening. Davina watched it with the children and Mrs. Hernandez, all crowded onto the couch in their small living room. "That's my mama!" Sophia exclaimed, pointing at the screen as footage showed Davina singing at the festival. The 3-minute piece was beautifully done, presenting Davina as a talented entrepreneur who had overcome obstacles through creativity and determination. The final shot showed her embracing her children after a performance, the reporter's voiceover commenting on the power of pursuing passions while prioritizing family. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By Thursday morning, Davina's phone was inundated with messages, from the Blue Note reporting a surge in reservations for her performances, from Carla at the bakery relaying numerous orders for her, cookies, from friends and acquaintances offering congratulations. Most surprisingly, John Peterson called from the recording studio. "The company that hired us for those jingles saw you on the news," he explained. "They want to expand the campaign and feature you more prominently, possibly even in television spots. This would involve a significant increase in compensation." By the end of the week, Davina's world had expanded in ways she could never have anticipated. The bakery offered her a full-time position with benefits, allowing her to finally leave her remaining cleaning jobs. The Blue Note proposed a contract for regular weekend performances with a guaranteed minimum payment. The recording studio presented a formal agreement for ongoing vocal work. Suddenly, financial security was within reach. Not wealth, but stability and comfort for her family. The emergency fund grew from a few $100s to 1,000, then more. She began to consider possibilities that had seemed impossibly distant just months earlier. A larger apartment in a better school district, music lessons for the children, perhaps even a used car to eliminate their dependence on public transportation. Yet amidst this whirlwind of positive developments came an unwelcome disruption. On a Tuesday afternoon in late July, Davina arrived home from the bakery to find Marco sitting on the steps of their apartment building. He looked different, thinner, his once meticulous appearance now careless, his eyes lacking their former confidence. But his smile, when he saw her, was the same one that had captivated her years ago. "Davina," he said, rising to his feet, "you look amazing." She remained at a distance, arms crossed protectively. "What are you doing here, Marco?" "I saw you on the news," he explained, hands spread in a placating gesture. "You've done so well. I'm proud of you." The words struck Davina as profoundly inadequate, almost offensive in their presumption. "You don't get to be proud of me," she said quietly. "You weren't here for any of this." Marco's expression shifted to one of practiced contrition. No, I made a terrible mistake. I've been trying to get my life together, to be worthy of coming back." Coming back," Davina repeated, the words feeling surreal. "To you, to the kids. I miss my family." A strange calm settled over Davina as she studied the man she had once built her life around. There was a time when his return would have been her most fervent wish, when she would have welcomed him with relief and gratitude. That time had passed. "The children will be home soon," she said evenly. "If you want to see them, we can arrange something proper. Scheduled visits, gradual reintroduction. They've been through enough upheaval." Marco took a step toward her, his expression darkening. "I'm their father, Davina. I don't need scheduled visits to see my own children." "You lost the right to make those demands when you walked out without a word," she replied, maintaining her composure. "If you genuinely want to be in their lives, we'll find a way to make that happen. But it will be on terms that prioritize their well-being, not your convenience." Their conversation continued on the building steps, Marco alternating between appeals to their shared history and thinly veiled criticism of her new lifestyle. "All this singing and baking," he said dismissively, "it's not a real career, Davina. What kind of example does that set for the kids?" Davina nearly laughed at the irony. An example of perseverance, creativity, hard work, of finding joy in difficult circumstances. I think those are valuable lessons. Before Marco could respond, a car pulled up, and Eleanor emerged, returning from music camp. She froze at the sight of her father, her expression cycling rapidly through shock, confusion, and wariness. "Papa," she said, her voice small. Marco's face softened as he knelt to her height. "Elena, look how tall you've gotten." Elena glanced uncertainly between her parents before taking a deliberate step toward her mother. The gesture was not lost on Marco, whose smile faltered. "Why are you here?" Elena asked, a directness beyond her years. The moment crystallized everything for Davina. Her children had adapted to their new reality with remarkable resilience. They were healing, finding stability and joy in their reconfigured family. Marco's sudden reappearance threatened that hard-won equilibrium. "Your father wanted to see how we're doing," Davina explained gently. "He's not staying right now, but he'd like to visit with you all soon." Elena nodded, processing this information with characteristic thoughtfulness. "I have a music recital next week. You could come to that," she offered to Marco, her tone polite but reserved. It was a perfect illustration of what Davina had been trying to explain. Reintegration would need to be gradual, respectful of the children's emotional needs. After Elena went inside to start her homework, Marco remained on the steps, visibly shaken by his daughter's measured response. "She used to run into my arms," he said quietly. "Children adapt," Davina replied. "They've had to." As the conversation concluded, Marco agreed to Davina's terms for re-establishing contact with the children. Supervised visits initially, consistent communication, a clear understanding that he would not be moving back into their home. "I'm sorry," he said as he prepared to leave. "I didn't realize what I was throwing away." Davina nodded, accepting his apology without offering absolution. "The children deserve to have their father in their lives if you're ready to be that for them. But our relationship is a separate matter." Watching him walk away, Davina felt an unexpected lightness. The confrontation she had both dreaded and fantasized about for months had finally occurred, and she had emerged with her dignity and boundaries intact. Marco no longer held power over her happiness. That evening, as she helped the children with homework and prepared dinner, Davina reflected on the day's events. Marco's return complicated things logistically, but it had also confirmed the strength of the foundation she had built in his absence. Later, after the younger children were asleep, Elena joined Davina at the kitchen table, where she was reviewing contracts from the recording studio. "Is Papa coming back to live with us?" Elena asked directly. Davina set down her papers, giving her daughter her full attention. "No, mija. He'll be part of your lives again. But our family has changed. Sometimes things break in ways that can't be completely fixed." Elena nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. "I like our life now," she admitted. "I like hearing you sing. You never did that when Papa was here." The observation struck Davina profoundly. Elena was right. She had suppressed so much of herself during her marriage, making herself smaller to accommodate Marco's larger personality and ambitions. "Change can be good," Davina agreed, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Even when it starts with something painful." As July gave way to August, the pieces of Davina's new life continued to fall into place. The expanded recording contract provided enough income for her to finally move the family to a larger apartment in a better neighborhood. The children would start the new school year in a well-regarded district, with Elena attending the arts-focused middle school she had dreamed of. Marco kept his word about scheduled visits, showing up consistently if somewhat awkwardly, gradually rebuilding relationships with the children. He made no further attempts to reconcile with Davina, seemingly accepting that chapter of their lives was closed. On the day before the move, as Davina packed the last of their belongings, Naomi from the bus terminal stopped by with a farewell gift, a framed copy of the festival poster featuring Davina's performance. Who would have thought that a video, taken without your permission, would lead to all this? Naomi mused, gesturing around the apartment where moving boxes were stacked. Davina smiled, remembering the initial shock of discovering the recording. Life's full of unexpected turning points, isn't it? Naomi nodded, helping tape a box closed. You know, I've been watching you these past months. You never gave up, even when things were at their worst. You just kept showing up, doing whatever needed to be done. I had no choice, Davina replied. My children needed me to be strong. We always have choices, Naomi countered. Some people choose bitterness or defeat. You chose resilience. That's why your story resonates with so many people. As Naomi left, Davina stood in the center of the apartment that had witnessed both her darkest days and the beginning of her renewal. Soon, they would leave these rooms behind, moving toward a future she was actively shaping, rather than merely enduring. The journey wasn't over, of course. There would be new challenges, setbacks, adjustments, but Davina faced them now with confidence born of hard-won experience. She had discovered reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed, talents that had lain dormant for years, and a community of support that had emerged when she needed it most. The rain-splattered note that had collapsed her world 6 months earlier now seemed less like an ending and more like an unexpected doorway, painful to pass through but leading to open skies beyond. Have you or someone you know ever experienced an unexpected turning point that completely changed the course of your life? Let me know in the comments. The new apartment changed everything. Located on the 3rd floor of a well-maintained building with a small courtyard, it offered luxuries they had done without for years. Reliable heating, working appliances, windows that sealed properly against winter drafts, and most miraculous of all, 2 bathrooms. The children claimed their spaces with exuberant enthusiasm. Elena, now 11, was given her own room, a privilege she accepted with solemn gratitude. Miguel and Sofia shared the 2nd bedroom, though Miguel extracted a promise that he would get his own space when we get a house someday. A house? Davina had repeated, amused by her son's confident assumption of their continued upward trajectory. Miguel nodded matter-of-factly. When you become a famous singer like on TV, the comment reminded Davina of just how visible her journey had become to her children. They watched her navigate this evolving career with keen attention, absorbing lessons about perseverance and possibility that she hoped would serve them well. The fall brought new routines. Elena flourished at her arts-focused middle school, immersing herself in chorus and theater. Miguel joined a soccer team that practiced at the park near their new home. Sofia, now 4, started preschool 3 mornings a week, giving Davina uninterrupted time at the bakery. Weekends revolved around Davina's performances at the Blue Note, which had evolved from simple sets to thematic showcases that attracted growing audiences. Local musicians began to request collaborations, recognizing the drawing power of her voice and authentic presence. John Peterson's recording studio became a second home, as Davina's commercial work expanded beyond jingles to include backup vocals for local artists and even a television theme for a regional morning show. These projects might not have been the artistic expression she craved, but they provided steady income and professional connections. Through it all, Marco maintained his presence in the children's lives with weekly visits and occasional school events. Their co-parenting relationship settled into a cautious civility, focused entirely on the children's well-being. If he harbored hopes of reconciliation, he kept them to himself. On a crisp October evening, as Davina prepared for her Saturday performance, at the Blue Note, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Is this Davina Martinez?" a woman's voice asked when she answered. "Yes, speaking. My name is Samantha Reynolds. I'm a talent scout for Horizon Records, an independent label based in Nashville. I saw you perform last weekend and was impressed with your voice and presence." Davina sat down abruptly. "Thank you," she managed, mind racing. "We're putting together a compilation album of emerging vocalists performing original material," Samantha continued. "I'd like to discuss the possibility of including you." The conversation that followed was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Horizon wasn't a major label, but it had respectable distribution and a track record of launching regional artists toward broader recognition. The compilation would feature 10 singers, each contributing one original song. Recording would take place in Nashville over a single weekend in November. "I don't have original material," Davina admitted, reluctant to squander this opportunity but unwilling to misrepresent herself. "You don't write?" Samantha sounded surprised. "I've written bits and pieces but never completed a song," Davina explained. The melodies that came to her during quiet moments had rarely been developed beyond fragments, scribbled in notebooks and set aside as life intervened. "Well, we do have staff writers who could provide material," Samantha offered. "But honestly, the most compelling tracks on these compilations are usually the authentic personal ones. Think about it, you've certainly got a story to tell." After the call ended, Davina sat motionless, processing this unexpected development. A recording on a legitimate label, even just one song on a compilation, represented a significant step beyond local performances and commercial work. But original material, the prospect was as daunting as it was exciting. That evening at the Blue Note, Davina mentioned the opportunity to Tony between sets. "You absolutely have to do this," he insisted, eyes wide with excitement. "Labels like Horizon are perfect stepping stones, small enough to give personalized attention, established enough to open doors. But the original song requirement," Tony waved dismissively. "You've been humming melodies and jotting down lyrics for months. I've seen you. Stop doubting yourself and just finish one." The following morning, Davina spread her notebooks across the kitchen table while the children entertained themselves in the living room. Pages of fragments, lyrical phrases, melodic notations, half-formed verses represented months of creative impulses captured in stolen moments. She began to sort them by theme, noticing patterns emerging. Many fragments revolved around transformation, resilience, and unexpected second chances. Reflections of her own journey. Others spoke of maternal love and sacrifice. Still others explored the power of music itself as a healing force. "What are you doing, Mama?" Elena asked, appearing at her elbow. "Trying to write a song," Davina explained. "Remember that phone call I told you about? The record label wants something original from me." Elena surveyed the scattered notes with interest. "Can I help?" Together, they began piecing together fragments that resonated with both of them, Elena's natural musicality proving invaluable. As they tested melodic combinations, by afternoon they had assembled a rough framework, a ballad about finding your voice after long silence. Over the next 2 weeks, between performances and family responsibilities, Davina refined the song. John Peterson offered studio time to record a demo, bringing in a guitarist friend to create a simple arrangement. When the finished recording was sent to Samantha Reynolds, her response was immediate and enthusiastic. "This is exactly what we're looking for. Raw, authentic, emotionally resonant. We'll see you in Nashville next month." The Nashville trip presented logistical challenges. 3 days away from the children required careful planning. Mrs. Hernandez agreed to stay in the apartment, with Marco taking the children on Saturday as per their usual arrangement. Carla gave Davina time off from the bakery, and Tony adjusted the Blue Note schedule. "Everything's covered," Elena assured her mother as Davina fretted over final arrangements the night before her departure. "We want you to do this." The Nashville experience was transformative. The professional studio environment, the skilled session musicians, the guidance from experienced producers, all elevated Davina's song beyond what she had imagined possible. The other artists on the compilation, all at similar career stages, became instant allies and resources, sharing contacts and advice. Most profound was the validation. These industry professionals heard something valuable in her voice, something worth investing in. They treated her not as a novelty, the singing single mother from the local news, but as a legitimate artist with potential. "You've got a rare quality," the producer told her during a break. "Your voice communicates emotion directly, without artifice. That can't be taught." Davina returned home inspired and energized, carrying a rough mix of her recording and a network of new professional connections. The compilation would be released in spring, with a digital pre-release and limited radio promotion. The months that followed brought steady growth in all aspects of her emerging career. The Blue Note performances expanded to include occasional appearances at larger venues in neighboring cities. The recording studio work became more varied, including voiceover opportunities for local businesses and educational materials. The bakery promoted her to assistant manager, recognizing both her skills and the marketing advantage of her increasing local recognition. Each advancement brought new challenges in balancing professional opportunities with family needs. Davina developed systems and support networks, trusted babysitters for evening performances, carpools for the children's activities, meal preparation strategies for busy weeks. Mako increased his involvement, gradually rebuilding his relationship with the children while respecting the boundaries Davina had established. One unseasonably warm February afternoon, as Davina picked up Sophia from preschool, her phone rang with Samantha Reynolds' number. "The compilation release date is set for April 15th, Samantha announced after brief pleasantries. "We're organizing a launch event in Nashville with performances from all 10 artists. Can you make it work?" The timing was challenging. Middle of the school semester, Elena's spring concert, Miguel's soccer tournament, but the opportunity was too significant to decline. Once again, the family rallied around Davina's career milestone, adjusting schedules and responsibilities to make it possible. The Nashville launch exceeded all expectations. Each artist performed their compilation song plus one additional piece. The crowd was small but influential. Music journalists, radio programmers, industry professionals, and dedicated fans of independent music. Davina's performance, scheduled in the coveted second-to-last position, garnered the night's strongest response. Afterward, as artists mingled with audience members, Davina found herself approached by a distinguished-looking man with silver hair and kind eyes. "George Brennan," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I run a small production company here in Nashville. Your performance tonight was exceptional." Davina thanked him, accustomed now to post-performance compliments, but still grateful for each one. "I have a project that might interest you," George continued. "I'm producing an album of duets pairing established artists with emerging voices. James Riverton is looking for a female vocalist for 2 tracks on his next release." Davina's breath caught. James Riverton was a multi-platinum artist, a respected industry veteran whose career had spanned decades. The recording would happen here in Nashville over about a week, George explained. The pay is standard industry scale for session work, plus royalties if the tracks are released as singles. The opportunity was extraordinary. Professional validation at a national level, potential exposure to millions of listeners, collaboration with a legendary artist. It was everything Davina might have dreamed of just a year earlier. Yet, as George outlined the details, an unexpected ambivalence emerged. A week in Nashville, away from the children during their end-of-year activities, away from her regular income sources, away from the stability she had worked so hard to establish. "I'd need to check my calendar," she said carefully. "I have 3 children and several work commitments to consider." George nodded, understanding. "Family obligations are important. Talk it over with them. See what's possible. James isn't recording until June, so there's some flexibility with exact dates." That night in her hotel room, Davina made a video call to the children, who crowded eagerly around Elena's tablet screen. "How was the show, Mama?" Miguel asked, his face pressed close to the camera. "Amazing," Davina replied, her heart full. At the sight of their familiar faces, the audience loved our song. "Did they clap a lot?" Sophia wanted to know. "So much clapping," Davina assured her with a smile. "And I have some exciting news. A very important producer wants me to sing with a famous artist on his next album." She explained the opportunity in terms they could understand, emphasizing both the professional significance and the week-long separation it would require. Elena, perceptive as always, caught the uncertainty in her mother's voice. "You don't sound happy about it." "I'm torn," Davina admitted. "It's an incredible opportunity, but it means being away from you all during an important time of year." "You should do it," Elena said firmly. "We'll be okay." Miguel nodded agreement. "Mrs. Hernandez makes better pancakes than you anyway," he added with a mischievous grin. Sophia, less certain, asked, "But you'll come back, right? You won't stay in Nashville forever?" The innocent question pierced Davina's heart, revealing the underlying insecurity her youngest still carried after Marco's abandonment. "Oh, mi corazon, of course I'll come back," she promised. "Nothing could keep me away from you 3 for long. Not even singing with the most famous person in the world." After the call ended, Davina sat on the hotel bed, contemplating the path. Before her, the opportunity George offered represented a potential gateway to national recognition, the kind of break artists worked years to achieve. Yet it also represented a crossroads of sorts. Until now, her musical career had developed organically alongside her primary identity as a mother. Each step had been integrated into their family life, adjustments made incrementally. This Nashville project would be different, a deliberate prioritization of her artistic goals, requiring significant compromise from the children. Was it selfish to pursue it? Or would declining it constitute a different kind of selfishness, a failure to fully develop the gifts she had been given, gifts that ultimately benefited her family as well? The answer came to her as she packed for the flight home. She would accept George's offer, but with conditions. The recording schedule would need to accommodate video calls with the children each day. The week would need to be carefully chosen to minimize disruption to their important activities. And most importantly, the children would understand that this was not the beginning of longer separations, but a special circumstance with defined boundaries. Back home, life resumed its carefully choreographed routine. The compilation album was released in April, to modest but positive reception. Davina's track received particular attention from several music blogs, described as emotionally authentic and vocally stunning. Local radio stations added it to their rotation, increasing her recognition in the community. As arrangements for the Nashville recording session took shape, Davina was surprised by the support that materialized. Marco rearranged his work schedule to take the children for 3 of the 7 days. Mrs. Hernandez committed to the remaining days. Elena's music teacher offered additional practice sessions to prepare her for an important recital Davina would miss. "Everyone wants to help," Eleanor observed as they reviewed the calendar together, "because they know how hard you've worked." The realization was humbling. In the darkest days after Marco's departure, Davina had felt utterly alone, crushed by sole responsibility for 3 young lives. Now, A strong network surrounded them. Friends, colleagues, neighbors who recognized their worth and invested in their success. On a Wednesday evening in late May, as summer approached and final preparations for the Nashville trip were underway, Davina stood in the doorway of Elena's room, watching her daughter practice violin. The melody, complex and beautifully rendered, filled the apartment with its haunting intensity. At 11, almost 12, Elena was at the threshold of adolescence, her childhood features gradually refining into the woman she would become. Her dedication to music had deepened over the past year, nurtured by Davina's example and the specialized school's resources. "That sounds beautiful," Davina said when Elena finished the piece. Elena lowered her violin, face flushed with concentration. "I'm playing it at the recital while you're in Nashville. I wanted it to be perfect." The simple statement encapsulated so much about their journey together. The mutual support, the shared passion for music, the graceful acceptance of necessary separations. "I wish I could be there," Davina said softly. "You will be," Elena replied. With certainty, Mrs. Hernandez promised to record it, and besides, she added with unexpected wisdom, "You're the reason I'm playing at all. You showed me that music matters." That night, as Davina checked on each sleeping child during her customary rounds, she reflected on the extraordinary transformation of their lives. From the desperate woman reading a goodbye note in a rain-splattered kitchen to a recording artist. Preparing for a collaboration with a major musician, the journey seemed almost unbelievable. Yet the most significant changes were not external, but internal. The children were more confident, more resilient. Davina herself moved through the world with newfound assurance, her voice strong in every sense. The path ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, career decisions, financial considerations, co-parenting complexities. But Davina faced them now from a position of strength rather than desperation, empowered by the knowledge that she had already overcome the worst life had thrown at her. As she closed Sophia's door, leaving her youngest to dream peacefully beneath a canopy of glow-in-the-dark stars, Davina whispered a quiet affirmation. "We made it through the storm." Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between a personal opportunity and family responsibilities? Did you find a way to balance both, or did you have to choose one over the other? Share your experience in the comments below. Davina woke on the morning of her departure with the sun slanting through the curtains like a promise. In the quiet of the apartment she and her children had come to cherish, she allowed herself a rare moment of stillness. The soft hum of distant traffic, the faint rustle of leaves outside Elena's window, the rhythmic breathing of 3 sleeping children. She dressed carefully, comfortable yet polished, each layer a talisman against the unknowns that lay ahead. The night before, she had packed her guitar, her notebooks filled with lyric ideas, and a small photo of her family that she tucked into the lining of her suitcase. When she slipped it out now and studied the image, Elena's determined grin, Miguel's mischievous glint, Sophia's toothless smile, it anchored her. This journey was not just for her own dreams, it was for them, for the example she was setting, for the security she aimed to provide, and for the legacy of resilience she wanted to pass on. In the hallway, she paused outside the children's rooms. The door to Sophia's room was closed, but through the crack she could see the glow of her nightlight. Elena's door stood ajar. A scrap of violin sheet music peeked out. Miguel's room was empty. He had already left with Marco for soccer practice. Their father stood in the courtyard below, holding Miguel's hand, offering last-minute advice about teamwork and focus. The sight was peaceful, reminder that the reconfigured family unit was stronger when each member honored the roles they now inhabited. Downstairs, Mrs. Hernandez was waiting by the front door, a thermos of coffee in one hand and a canvas tote in the other. Her silver hair was neatly pinned, her expression both proud and tender. When she saw Davina, her eyes shone. "Everything's ready," she said softly. "They've got activities all day. I'll send you photos." Davina hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Abuela Rosa. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'd do the same for me," Mrs. Hernandez replied, smiling. "Go show Nashville what you and your music are made of." The drive to the airport was a blur of early morning traffic and Davina's silent prayers that the children would thrive in her absence, that she would navigate the studio sessions with grace, that she might find something deeper in the collaboration she sought. By the time she checked in, tears she had fought back slipped free. Not tears of fear, but of gratitude, for the unexpected turns that had brought her here, for the people who had believed in her, and for the girl she once was, who dared to dream beyond her kitchen table. In Nashville, the city of song, Davina felt both small and infinite. The studio was nestled in a historic brick building lined with posters of legends: Patsy Cline, Dolly Parton, Johnny Cash. Inside, she met George Brennan again, whose warmth erased her residual nerves. The first days were spent in preparation, listening to James Riverton's demos, discussing vocal approaches, and experimenting with harmonies. James himself arrived midweek, a tall figure whose presence was at once commanding and approachable. When she first heard his voice on playback, it struck her like a gale, rich, textured, familiar, from countless radio moments, but clothed now in the possibility of a duet. "Your voice," he said when he first met her, "it soars in unexpected places. I can't wait to hear our voices together." They began with a folk-tinged ballad that spoke of finding home in the hearts of strangers, a theme resonant with both of their journeys. Davina learned to adapt to the studio setting, the headphones isolating yet intimate, the microphone an instrument in itself. James guided her through phrasing that allowed her natural vibrato to bloom without constraints. With each take, her confidence deepened. The words she had penned months earlier in a rush of inspiration took on new life under James's direction. Between sessions, Davina stole moments to call home. Through the Artist Lounge's Wi-Fi, she video-called Elena, who played her new violin solo and promised to keep practicing. Miguel demonstrated a soccer trick he had perfected, while Sophia toddled around with a crayon drawing labeled "Mama Sings in Nashville." Their faces flickering on the screen reminded Davina that success was sweetest when shared. On the fourth day, the production team announced they would film the duet's final take for a behind-the-scenes feature. Davina felt the butterflies return, this time mingled with a fierce joy. The cameras rolled as she lifted into the chorus, her harmonies weaving around James's lead like golden threads. He smiled in her headphones, their voices converging in a moment of seamless unity. When the producer called "cut," the room erupted in applause. "That was magic," James said, eyes bright. "Thank you for trusting your voice." As the week drew to a close, the labors of long hours gave way to celebration. George arranged a small gathering at a nearby cafe where studio staff, musicians, and label executives toasted with sparkling cider. James raised his glass. "To new partnerships," he said, "and to voices that refuse to be silenced." Davina raised her own glass, her heart full. In the clinking of cups, she sensed an unseen chorus, the rhythm of her children's laughter, the steady heartbeat of Mrs. Hernandez's encouragement, the echo of Naomi's kindness at the bus terminal, even the imprint of Marco's sporadic support. Each contribution had led her here. The flight home felt unreal. Below her, the patchwork fields of Tennessee slid into the green plains of the Midwest until city lights winked beneath her again. Back in New York, she was greeted by a small crowd. Mrs. Hernandez, Miss Jackson from Elena's school, clutching a report card with straight A's in music, Naomi with a poster advertising Davina's upcoming performances, and a cluster of neighborhood friends bearing homemade signs. "Welcome home, star!" Elena launched herself into her mother's arms. "You did it!" she cried. "I knew you would!" Miguel bounded forward, nearly knocking Davina over. "The team won their game," he announced proudly. "Coach said I played my best yet." Sophia clutched a snow globe she had made, a miniature stage with tiny figurines of musicians. "Mama's home!" she cheered, shaking it so the glitter swirled. In the days that followed, Davina's schedule resumed its familiar rhythms, but everything felt different. The bakery promoted her to head baker, sending her recipes for seasonal menus and allowing her to mentor new hires. The Blue Note contract evolved into a monthly headline slot. Perhaps half of the patrons now came believing they might catch her singing with James Riverton on the radio. The compilation album featuring her original song hit digital platforms on April 15th, garnering heartfelt reviews that cited her stirring vocals and honest storytelling. Yet Davina's greatest reward was the subtle shifts within her own home. One evening, after a run of late performances, she returned to find Elena and Miguel cooking dinner, a tortilla pizza hybrid chosen from the family's cherished recipe box, while Sophia set the table with mismatched, colorful plates. The table, once a battlefield of rushed breakfasts, now hummed with laughter and collaboration. When they finally sat to eat, Davina asked, "How was your day?" Elena beamed. "I got a standing ovation at my recital. Ms. Jackson said the judges commented on my control and emotion." "And?" Davina prompted gently. "And then she said I sounded like you when you sing those songs about heart and hope." Miguel chimed in. "I scored the winning goal. Coach said I was focused in a way he's never seen." Sophia, with cheeks full of pasta, giggled. "I painted a picture of Mama singing and the sun smiling." Davina felt tears sting her eyes. Tears of pride and joy. Tears that spoke of the distance she had traveled. She raised her glass of lemonade. "To each of you, for being my greatest inspiration." Their clinking cups echoed around the room, sealing their bond anew. In the months that followed, Davina continued to navigate the delicate dance of aspiration and caregiving. When the duet album with James Riverton released, it climbed indie charts and received unexpected airplay on national radio. The music video, featuring footage from her early days at the bus terminal intertwined with studio clips, resonated with audiences who related to her story of perseverance. She met with a literary agent who wanted to adapt her journey into a memoir. She considered offers to teach a songwriting workshop for single parents. Invitations arrived for regional festivals and speaking engagements where she spoke candidly about balancing ambition with motherhood. Each opportunity required reflection. Would this align with her values and priorities? Would it honor the family she had fought so hard to protect? Answers came from the very children whose faces first inspired her. One afternoon, as she reviewed a contract for a month-long tour, she found a note on her keyboard. "Mama will always be your home base. Go keep chasing your dreams, and we'll be right here cheering you on. Love, Elena, Miguel, and Sophia." It was written in colorful, marker-on construction paper, bordered with little hearts and musical notes. Davina folded it and placed it in her journal, alongside the old photo of her family. She realized then that her story had never been about abandoning responsibilities to chase stardom. It had always been about weaving her dreams into the fabric of her family's life, transforming adversity into art, forging community through vulnerability, and showing her children that the boundaries of possibility were defined only by the limits they placed on themselves. Years later, when all three children had graduated, Elena to a conservatory, Miguel to a sports scholarship, and Sophia to a theater program, they would recount how their mother's unexpected journey taught them lessons no classroom ever could. They would speak of rain-splattered notes and final warnings, of pancakes made from a half-gallon of milk, of cookies sold at the bus terminal, and of the small coffee shop where a stage and faith converged into destiny. But most of all, they would remember that stormy morning when a single mother stared at a life unraveled and decided not to surrender. They would remember how she sang through her tears, baked through her fears, and refused to be defined by an ending that was really a beginning. Davina Martinez kept that spirit alive in every note she sang, in every batch of dough she kneaded, in every embrace she gave her children. Because she had learned that true success was never a solitary triumph, but a shared symphony, where each voice, lifted in harmony, created something far greater than any one melody alone.